Welcome everybody to One Big Virtual Weekend. We're here to do a family open house with President Matt Scogin and his wife Sarah. On behalf of the Parents Council and all of us at Hope College, thank you for logging in today. We're hoping to get through a lot of your pre-submitted questions, and you can also submit questions throughout the presentation using the Q&A feature in the bottom menu of Zoom. Thank you also for helping keep our students, faculty, and staff safe by participating in One Big Virtual Weekend. We can't wait until we have you back on campus in person. Without further ado, I'm going to introduce one of our Parents Council members, Tara Nutter, who's agreed to offer an opening prayer for today's event. Thank you so much, Tara, for what you do as a member of our Parents Council.
Thanks, Scott. It's great to be here. And I feel so blessed to be a Hope parent and also to be able to pray alongside all of you today together. Let's bow our heads and pray. Father, we come before you today in gratitude for the special place that is Hope College. Grateful that our children are surrounded by people who put you first and who show them how to love God and to love each other. We say thank you for the staff, Lord, for their creativity, their perseverance, and their warmth as they create learning environments and lessons that keep our children engaged and present. May they right now feel our appreciation and support wherever they are. In many ways, they stand in the gap for parents miles away, and we do not take their importance for granted. Lord, thank you for our school leadership, for the way their discerning hearts are focused on you and your vision for Hope College. We have no doubt that you orchestrated a million tiny details to bring the exact people at the exact right time to see your mission carried through. You must be so happy with their work, and we are grateful for each of them. Continue to wrap a hedge of protection around our children. Keep their eyes and their hearts open to the plans that you have for them. Humbly, we submit these prayers to you, Father God. Amen.
Thanks, Tara, and thanks again for representing the Parents Council today. That's a great group that provides a voice for families in the life of the college. And before I introduce the next part of our presentation, I just have a personal note to say thank you to all of your students. I've been amazed with the resiliency that they've shown so far this semester and the extra hard work that they've put in to keep us safe and to keep us here on campus, which is where we know they want to be. So thank you to your sons and your daughters, and thank you to all of you joining us today. When President Scogan was inaugurated last September, I don't think any of us could have pictured that this is what his first year in office would look like. But I can't picture anyone better to have in the President's house and in the President's office than Matt and Sarah Scogin. We're pleased to have them participate as part of this event. Matt's going to share a few thoughts, and then what we're going to do is go to our pre-submitted questions and questions that come in live. So you can submit those questions now, and throughout the event, we'll get to those. And I have a list here of those that you submitted as part of the registration process. So at this time, I'd like to introduce President Matt Scogin.
Thanks, Scott. Greetings from the President's home at Hope College. I'm here with my wife, Sarah, and we'll basically jump right into questions so that we can make this as informal and conversational as possible. To start, I just wanted to reiterate some of the same thoughts that Scott just articulated, and that is to simply say thank you. Thanks for all that you've done to support our students, your students, through this extraordinary time. And thanks for all of your prayers and your support and your encouragement for us personally and for the institution of Hope. This has been an extraordinary 6 months, to say the least. And yet we're an extraordinary institution full of extraordinary people, and Hope College has risen to the occasion in a way that we find nothing short of inspiring. And it's been cool. It's been really cool to be a part of it. Sarah and I have been a part of the Hope College community in one way or another since the fall of 1998, when we both arrived here as freshmen. And I just have to say that we've never been more proud of this institution and the people who serve Hope College than we are right now. The faculty have shown extraordinary grit and pluck and ingenuity to adapt to new teaching modalities. Our staff have been working literally around the clock since May to get ready for a safe and productive learning environment this fall. And our students, your students, have shown incredible determination to pull off 9 weeks of in-person learning. And it's as I said, it's just been inspiring. So that's just what we wanted to say. Thank you. Hope College is in a very good place. I hope you have some sense of that. I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that Hope is one of the best positioned institutions in the country right now. I don't say that delusionally because I know we have our challenges, but we are in a very good place, a very strong place. We're 9 weeks through a 14-week semester. We have only 4 positive cases of COVID among our student body as of today, and that's a remarkable thing in and of itself. And what you need to know, and hopefully you know this, some places are reporting low numbers, but they're reporting low numbers because they're not doing testing, and we're doing very robust testing. And so when we say we have 4 cases on campus, we believe that's a real number. We actually think we have our hands on what the reality is, and 4 cases is a very small percentage 9 weeks into the semester. And when you look around the country at what's happening at other places, 2/3 of 4-year institutions, so 2/3 of colleges and universities around the country saw an enrollment decline from last year to this year. And we saw not just an increase, but a pretty significant increase in the size of our freshman class. And there was something reported in the Chronicle of Higher Education earlier this week that said headcount across higher education is down 7% just since COVID. And we just haven't seen anything like that here at Hope College. So we're in a very strong position. Again, thanks to you, thanks to our students, thanks to our colleagues. Hope is in a great place. And so I hope you have some sense of that. Why don't I stop there and we can go into your questions so that we can make this as conversational as possible.
Great, thanks, Matt. Family events are always fun to do. Normally they're in person and you get to connect and just hear the excitement and energy and interest that our families have in this institution, because the most important thing in their life is here with us and part of our community. And I actually see that coming through in the questions that they submitted ahead of time. So all of you submitted great questions. This is going to be a lot of fun, and we invite you to keep submitting those in the Q&A as well. The first one is, are you glad you took this job given the challenges of your first year as president?
Yeah, I am glad we took this job. I think we're both glad to be here. It's been a crazy year. It's been stressful. It's been weighty. There's been a lot of mornings where we wake up thinking, what are we going to do? But God has led us through this. And I think we're feeling as called to be here as we've ever felt. And we're also feeling a strong sense that God is doing something here, that there's, Scott, you referenced the inauguration, which was just a little over a year ago. And in the inauguration speech, I made the whole thing centered around Isaiah 43, and I said that we believe God is doing a new thing at Hope. And of course, we had no idea what that new thing might entail, but now we happen to believe that everything we've been through over the last 6 months is a part of what God wants to do here. And it turns out that when there's disruption, disruption creates an opportunity for innovation and for learning. And higher education across the board has been disrupted in a way that it has never been in the 400-year history of higher education in the United States. And we think that's an opportunity to learn. And so we're moving through this in a way where we want to position Hope to be better and stronger on the other side of it. And that's been the mindset by which we've tried to navigate it personally and by which we've tried to lead Hope as an institution. Let's know that this is a storm. It's not an existential crisis for Hope. We will exist on the other side of COVID. And so we want to do everything we can to position our institution to be stronger and to serve and educate our students and to walk through this journey with them in a way that strengthens their faith. What would you say anything about being glad to be here?
Yeah, I mean, I think about it a little bit differently. For our family, it's been really good, actually. Matt had quite busy hours in New York, and here he sees the kids throughout the day. We live in the middle of campus, and so he's in and out. The kids could, they see him in the Pine Grove. They can wander to his office and say hello if they really wanted to. And so that's been, and a calmer life with a backyard and everything. I mean, there's a lot to be really thankful for, actually.
Thanks, Sarah, and thanks, Matt. The next question is a little bit more about our students specifically. You mentioned some of the challenges of this time, and we have a pre-submitted question here about, with rules and regulations that have added, with all the things we need to do to keep our students safe, what are we doing specifically to help them connect socially?
It's a great question. And a couple weeks into the semester, we realized that that was going to be one of our biggest challenges, was doing anything we can to create opportunities for engagement. And I kept saying, we have to try to make this fun. And I was using that word intentionally. We have to try to make this fun. Obviously, we're an educational institute, and so some people find learning fun. I think most of us do, but we also have to find ways outside of the classroom to have fun. And so we've been doing our best to be creative about connecting our students so that they can build relationships. I happen to believe that our students will, in the end, form deeper relationships because they have this profound shared experience of going through college during COVID together. But that doesn't mean it's not hard, and it is hard right now. So we're trying to be creative about it. We've had giveaways in the Pine Grove every Friday for the last several weeks. Yesterday in the Pine Grove, there was an Apple Festival. Student Congress is doing what they call something every Saturday in the Pine Grove. We've had food trucks in the Pine Grove. We've had outdoor movie nights. The theater department has done outdoor performances of theater. The dance department is doing a virtual dance performance this weekend. Vanderprov, which is our improv comedy group, did a performance outdoors last night. So we're doing our best. We're doing our best to find ways to make this fun, to make this engaging, and at the same time do everything we can to make sure that we're staying safe and healthy. There's other things. Obviously, I think we're all lamenting the fact that chapel isn't the way it normally is, and yet we're obviously chapel is live streamed. And a lot of students have been engaging with chapel through like watch parties or getting together with Bible studies and watching chapel together in groups of small groups of people, and then not only watching it, but then talking about it together. And so in some ways, there's been actually an opportunity to make it more engaging and more of a conversation rather than just something that students come and observe. So yeah, I think that the answer is we're doing our best. If anyone has ideas, we're welcome to ideas and input. We're doing our best to be creative with regard to how we find ways for students to engage socially in the midst of all the restrictions.
Thank you. And you can tell by the questions that obviously the pandemic and COVID-19 is on people's minds. I think it comes through in this next one, which is, how is Hope doing financially? You mentioned a strong position, but maybe share a few more details about that.
Sure. Thanks. Yeah, I think the headline is that we're in good shape. We have a strong balance sheet. That means we have a good amount of cash reserves and we have very limited debt. And so the strong balance sheet allows us to navigate this crisis in a way where we can position ourselves to be stronger on the other side of it. That said, our operating budget for this year looks pretty challenging. We've spent $3 million this semester alone on testing, and we'll probably spend another $2 to $3 million on testing in the spring. So obviously a pretty big increase in expenses. And at the same time, we've seen a drop in revenue because some students couldn't be on campus this semester, or because of specific circumstances didn't want to be on campus this semester, which is totally understandable. So obviously that dynamic drop in revenue and substantial increase in expenses creates a budget hole. Right now we're looking at about a $2.5 million budget gap for this year, and we'll close that. By the way, that's a $2.5 million budget gap off of a $103 million annual budget. So it's, $2.5 million is not nothing, but at the end of the day, it's a little less than 2.5% of the overall budget. So it's manageable. We'll close that gap by doing some belt tightening. And I happen to believe that any organization has some room for belt tightening. So we'll do a little of that. And then we'll find other creative ways to do it. We had a great cabinet meeting earlier this week where it was first suggested maybe the leaders of the college should take a haircut in our compensation this year, and everyone was willing to do that. And then someone else suggested, what if we phrased it a little bit differently? And what if we said, instead of a cut, what if we just said we're all going to give more to Hope College this year? And I promise you, all of our top leaders give very generously to Hope already. And there's been a commitment on behalf of the cabinet and other senior leaders to give even more this year. And I think that mindset itself is what makes this place so special. We're basically saying we're not going to cut our way out of this, but we can give our way out of this. And what I like to say to our senior team is, I've never seen an organization that has shrunk itself to greatness, and that's not going to be our plan here. We're not going to shrink ourselves to greatness, but maybe we can give ourselves to greatness, and that kind of generosity. And by the way, we had a board meeting yesterday, and our board all unanimously said that we're all in to give generously this year also. So there's great things happening. The good news is financially we're in a strong position. Much honestly, and I hate to feel good based off of others' woes, but we're in a much stronger position than most colleges and universities around the country. Inside Higher Ed reported that there's a 30%, on average, a 30% budget gap for colleges and universities. And like I said, we're looking at a 2.5%. So ours is much different than what's happening nationwide.
Thanks. I'm next going to attempt to combine some of our pre-submitted questions with what we're seeing in the Q&A right now, and we'll continue talking about COVID a little bit. So what we'll do first is if you could speak to the fall semester, the semester that we're in right now, and what you would attribute some of those, you mentioned earlier, being in a good place as it regards to number of cases on campus. So talk a little bit about what has helped this fall go well. And then we have a couple questions in the live Q&A about planning for next semester. So once you speak to the fall, I'll let you know what those other questions are, and we'll kind of shift and talk about the spring.
Perfect. I think there's two things that have made the fall as successful as it has been. Well, I'll say three things actually. The first is God's favor, simple as that. There's been a lot of people praying all summer for God's protection over our semester, and He's answered that very clearly, very specifically. We did a day of fasting a week before classes started. We had 300 of our faculty and staff do a whole day of fasting and praying, and so God has been responsive and gracious to us. The second thing, I already mentioned this, our students have just been so inspiring in terms of their determination to behave responsibly. And that the third thing that's allowed us to stay in as good a position as we're in is that we have a very robust testing program. And our testing program it's cool because it's based on research and science that we had already been doing at Hope for decades before. And what's become the cornerstone of our testing program is this wastewater program, where we're monitoring the wastewater from our residential halls and residential zones, and we're detecting cases that way. So last week we noticed a little bit of an increase in Dykstra Hall. We tested everyone in Dykstra Hall, and we found two positive asymptomatic cases in Dykstra Hall. And out of a building that has more than 200 people in it, that's very significant that the wastewater can pick up 2 out of 200 people. So we feel really good about it. We were joking earlier this week that it's kind of funny that our wastewater has become a sexy thing, but it has. I get calls from other college presidents saying, can we hire you, Hope College, to do wastewater testing at our institution? And so this has become a bright spot for Hope, that we're doing this innovative approach to testing. I went out and shadowed the wastewater monitoring team a few weeks ago. The way it works is there are literally collection machines in the sewer systems. There's 9 different residential zones. We have our campus divided into 9 different residential zones. The machines take a sample every 20 minutes, 24/7, and then that collects in a bucket. And then every morning, the team goes out and collects these buckets from these 9 sites. And then they take the buckets back to the lab and they do analysis on it. So we know within a few hours of them collecting the bucket if there's an increase or if there's a signal of COVID in the wastewater. And as I said, I went out and followed the team, kind of shadowed them for a day a few weeks ago, and it's pretty real. Like, it's wastewater, you smell it. And when we went back to the lab, and they're doing the analysis in Aaron Best's lab. Aaron Best is one of our biology professors. And I was in there, and one of the students who was doing the analysis, he, with some tweezers, pulled out something from the beaker, and he said, "Look, President Scogan, here's a piece of toilet paper." So yeah, it's real, it's wastewater, but it's cool. It's really cool that we're using our water research to do it. They're testing. The President's Home is part of one of the zones, so we're part of it too. And I told the team to look out for some perler beads that we might be missing. So we'll see if they find anything interesting in our wastewater. But yeah, I think that's the combination that's allowed us to stay in person. God's favor, our students have been lights out good in their determination and behavior, and a pretty innovative approach to testing.
Another pre-submitted question that goes with this semester before we shift to next semester. Once someone is identified as a positive case, what happens?
Yeah, so when someone's identified as a positive case, they have the option of either going home to quarantine or staying on campus to quarantine. And we're seeing some of both. Some students want to just go home and be with their family or parents or whomever, and some students prefer to stay on campus. And we have 150 rooms set aside for quarantine space. So we have a significant amount of space available for quarantine students if we need it. Today we have just a fraction of that being used. So that's what happens. We've not had any students had to go to the hospital this semester. So we're praying that continues.
Great, thank you. So I'm going to shift to some of the live ones, which are about next semester. So this is from a family whose freshman student has an in-person lab once a week, and many of other classes are done from her dorm room. And the question is, with the continued low rate of positive cases, will more classes be in person next semester?
Yeah, the answer is yes, actually. We're in the process now of finalizing the spring semester. So the numbers for this semester, it's 50% of our classes are all in person, 30% of our classes are hybrid, and 20% of our classes are all online. So it's 20% all online and 80% are either in person or hybrid. I think the way it's going to land for the spring semester, it'll be closer to 10 to 15% will be all online, and 85 to 90% all in person or hybrid. So yes, there will be, this whole thing, it's not a switch, it's more like a dial. So the dial will gradually get more normal, and then at some point we'll find ourselves all of a sudden we're back to something that looks and feels pretty normal, but it's not going to be a switch. It's going to be a dial.
All right, thank you, and thanks for the family that submitted that question. Can you speak a little to the changes to the spring schedule, including what the current vision is for celebrating graduation in this coming April and May?
Yeah, sure. So with graduation, we're still we're not planning on any changes there. We're right now planning to celebrate 2 classes worth of graduates, the class of 2021 and the class of 2020. And I think what we'll do is have two separate but great celebrations for those 2 classes, but we're finalizing those plans. With regard to the changes in the spring semester schedule, we're going to start on 1 day later than scheduled. January 12th, I think, is the date, first day of classes. And then we've, just as we did in the fall, we've broken up the winter break into 2 separate midweek days off. And the first one that we did this fall was a lot of fun. We had some great activities, and so we'll do the same in the winter. We're trying to think of creative things we can do outside in the winter. Who knows, maybe we'll have ice skating or something like that on campus. So we're trying to think of creative things we can do with those days off. And then we had to move spring break. Basically what we're managing toward is minimizing the risk of sending 3,000 students away and then bringing them back. And so we basically attach spring break to summer break so that the semester will end 1 week earlier than originally scheduled.
Thank you. And we had a follow-up question on next semester. Do you feel it's a different level of academic rigor, either due to the schedule change, curriculum requirements, or anything with accreditation?
Yeah, it's a good question. So with the fall semester, we ended up truncating the semester by a week. And I think I've heard from a lot of students that it does actually feel more academically rigorous this fall. And I think that's a big part of it. That won't be the case in the spring semester. So the spring semester will be the normal amount of classroom days. So yeah, I have heard that comment from students. I think that's probably a function of, we wanted to end exams before Thanksgiving, and so we did have to truncate classroom days a little bit, and that means that students are doing more out of classroom exercises and learning. And so, I think it depends on the various class and professor for how they've managed through that. But I have heard that. I think part of it too is that it's just different, and I think everybody's adjusting to the differences here, and the differences themselves make for somewhat more challenging environment.
Thank you very much. We just had another live one come in about food service. They are acknowledging the hard work that the team is doing and know that it's a difficult situation, but sharing some feedback on portion size being a little small and vegetarian options limited. Are you involved in conversations about how to continue to improve tweaking food service menus and logistics during this time?
Yeah, we are, and we've had some feedback to that effect, and we're doing our best to be responsive. They have increased the portion size since the beginning of the semester, and they've also made more options available. So yeah, I appreciate the comment, and we're wide open to suggestions, so send them in if you have them. The dining halls are under, they have to follow regulations of restaurants and food service facilities, so they're under pretty tight regulations right now. And again, the path toward normalcy will not be a switch, but rather a dial. And so we've been able to inch the dial a little bit more toward normal this semester, but not much. That's the reality. And so hopefully, as we move into the spring, we'll be able to do more with regard to the dining experience.
Thank you. I'm going to switch over to one of our pre-submitted questions. How can parents best support their students in the new normal that is college life?
It's a great question. I think I think you're doing it. I mean, I think continuing to encourage your students, pray for your students. I think it's a new adventure for all of us. So I don't think there's obviously there's not a playbook for this. So I think anything you can do just to be a source of encouragement, and especially for our first year students, the transition to college is a transition. It's a challenging transition even in normal times, and to make that transition in the middle of a global pandemic that's a big challenge. The research shows that it's the first 7 to 8 weeks that really are instrumental, and if you can make it through the first 7 to 8 weeks, then you're in a good place. And so we're past week 9 now, so hopefully things will start to get easier. It just takes a while. It takes a while to make friendships. It takes a while to build strong relationships, but it will happen. I've said to our students, just give yourself time, be patient. Sarah and I met the fall of our freshman year. We didn't actually get that close until 3 years later. So it just takes time to build relationships. I think another thing I would say to parents is that I would encourage students to not fill their plate too full with out of classroom activities. Even in this environment, even in this semester, there's a lot of stuff to do, a lot of stuff to get involved with. And the FOMO, the fear of missing out, is real. And often what I see, when I see a student and ask, how are you doing? The answer is almost always, I'm busy or I'm tired. And then I'll say, well, tell me about your life. Tell me what you're doing. And they'll say, well, I have these, I have to study, I have to write this paper, and then I have to, I'm going to this club, or I'm going to this virtual meeting, or I'm doing this. They just have their plates very, very full. And my advice is always, maybe instead of trying to do 8 things, maybe pick 2 or 3 and do those things really well, and go deep and get involved with the organization rather than filling your plate with too many things.
So our families were asking how to support their children, but I love this. They're also asking, how are your children, the Scogan children, adjusting to school this year?
I'll let Sarah answer that. Our kids are still distance learning, so their school has mostly been Sarah.
Yeah, their school opens on Monday for in-person learning. So that's going to be a big switch. I'm a little anxious about it, just because I know that first week in wearing masks all day and everything will be a little bit tough, and waking up. I mean, they've been sleeping in till 8, and starting classes really at 9, and it's going to be like an hour earlier than that. But I think they've actually kind of been liking the at-home learning and the flexibility of that. And they've had really good attitudes through the whole thing. Matt's default, it's not just in things like this, it's optimism and humor always. And I think that's been good for our kids. They just they know what's going on, but they don't seem distressed by it. So I think they're doing really well.
Thanks for the question.
Yeah, that's kind.
Yeah.
This is another pre-submitted that might be a good follow-up for both of you on that one is what brings you joy at Hope?
Oh, I can go first and then will you answer too?
Okay.
For me, it's pretty simple. Students, spending time with students brings me so much joy. And if I've ever had a stressful day, if I wander down to the Klets or wander out into the Pine Grove and spend even just 5 or 10 minutes talking to students, that will brighten up any day. Your students are just amazing people. They're curious, they're passionate, they want to change the world, they're smart. And I just love spending time with students. I'm doing something this year that I did last year also, which is I'm dropping in on all the first year seminars. I think there's 44 first year seminars this year. And I'm about a little more than halfway through all of them. And I'll drop in and usually I'm there for 20 to 25 minutes. And I'll just say, you can ask me anything. You get to drive the conversation. And I love it. I just love that time. When I see one of those on my calendar, I know it's going to be a good day because they're just fun conversations. So for me, it's that simple. What brings me the most joy is spending time with students.
And I would say, so again, we live just in the center of campus. And so we walk outside, we see students and faculty and staff, and everybody has been so friendly and so sweet. And Matt told me the other, I mean, I kind of know this, but our son goes scooting around campus. Well, all the kids do, but Ollie, every chance he gets, goes scooting around campus.
Probably 40 laps a day.
And Matt said one of his first year seminar students said, I just have to ask you, your son fell off his scooter and I picked him up. Is he okay? And I think that's so great. They're scooting around campus and they're finding joy in just being with the student body and meeting people, and just the busyness. They love to see everybody around and just feel like they're part of the community in a way too. So if my kids are happy, I have a lot of joy too.
Thanks. And some of our families are interested in your family, and so thank you for sharing that. This next one might tie into Matt's sense of optimism and sense of humor. What is a perk of this pandemic for your family?
Oh, what would you say?
Well, from March until when was it that we could actually really get out again?
Yeah,
there were
like
several months of
late May, maybe.
There was several months of just being inside all the time, which, I mean, that's the most the kids have seen of Matt, just because, job, normal life, work and all that. In years, I don't know if ever they've had that much time with you. Right. So that's been really fun. This is his office here that we're in, and you can see the door is ajar. That's because it doesn't actually shut. If you push on it, it just opens. And so the dog will push through, or the kids, and they can say hello to Matt. I mean, that was that way for a period of time. We engaged them in videos for Instagram and stuff. They found that really fun. I think that 3 months of being home, although it comes with its own challenges, as everybody can imagine when you're home with your family all the time. But and all in all, I would say it was that was special time.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think a perk of it's working from home, as Sarah said, is sometimes challenging, but it's also there's a blessing to it. And so we did our best to focus on the blessing and less on the challenges. I think institutionally for Hope, I think a perk of the COVID crisis is just the chance to innovate and to use, we are a learning institution. We exist for teaching moments. And it turns out we've had a lot of teaching moments. We've learned a lot about learning and about how to infuse technology into our curriculum. And so I think for the institution of Hope, this has been a pretty substantial opportunity, actually, to, it just turns out when things are disrupted, they have a chance to fall back into place differently. And if we had said a year ago, we're going to try this grand experiment where 50% of our classes would be in person, 30% hybrid, and 20% all online, we would have spent years in committee meetings and conversations trying to decide if or could we pull off that grand experiment. And yet we've done it basically with 3 months of work over the summer, and it's gone remarkably smoothly, and Hope will never be the same, and it shouldn't be the same. And I think one thing we've learned is that we can change quicker and with a broader effect than we ever probably would have imagined. And so I think that there will be lots of, as I said, lots of things that we will learn and document as we come through this that will make Hope a better place once we're back to normal.
Thank you. While you were speaking, we had a fun comment, and I'm just going to read it because it kind of puts an explanation point on our last topic with your children on campus. We had someone say, "My daughter thinks it's a lot of fun to see the Scogan kids around campus. She tells me it always puts a smile on her face to see them scooting around and having fun." So I just wanted to share that.
That's nice.
I know my kids love it. It's nice to hear that the students are enjoying it too.
We're gonna
have to dodge our kids because sometimes Ollie's, he's fast on that scooter.
No, I always, when he goes out, I'm like, don't run over anybody. That's the key. Just like steer clear.
I'm gonna switch topics all the way over to the job market for the next one. So our next question came in was, what will the job market look like for 2021 graduates? Will they be competing with last year's grads?
Good question. We don't know. Obviously, we don't know exactly what the job market will be like next summer. I think we'll get data back on the 2020 graduates after Thanksgiving, and so we don't have full data on job placement rates yet. I will say anecdotally, I think our students, our 2020 grads, are doing fairly well. They're finding jobs and being successful in a pretty challenging environment. Obviously, this is a strange recession because it's hitting certain industries much harder than others. Tourism, entertainment, travel, those kinds of industries, small businesses have been hit very hard. So there are certain sectors of the economy that have really been hit hard, and there are other sectors that have not been hit as hard, or some sectors that actually are growing substantially through this. So it's uneven. All the research shows that that college graduates are doing better now than non-college graduates, and so that's the good news, is that the class of 2021 will be college graduates. And another thing I'll say is that we're very, very committed, and through the Borchter Center, we're committed to helping our students journey into the job market. And so it's not like graduation weekend comes and we say, okay, here you go, good luck. We actually want our students to view Hope College as a lifelong partner. And I would love it to be the case that any student, anytime they're thinking about changing jobs or looking at a new job or looking at a new career, one of the first calls they make is to Hope and saying, I'm thinking about doing something different. Does Hope know anybody in this industry who you can connect me to? The answer to that question is always yes. We have 35,000 alumni all around the world. Any place you can imagine, any industry you can imagine, we have contacts. And so we're excited and honored to help our students journey into life in the working world. It's one of the main things I've been talking about since I've been here, is how we can more deliberately connect the classroom experience to the working world. And so, yeah, I think it most likely will be a more challenging job market than it was a couple of years ago, but we're all in to help our students journey into that.
Thank you. We're going to jump around a little bit based on what I see in the live Q&A and the pre-submitted. So one more question here about next semester coming in a second, but also a public service announcement to continue to submit those questions in the live. We can answer a few more in the time that we have allotted. The next question in the live Q&A today is about spring testing. Are there any plans for return testing pre-arrival like we did already, and other thoughts about testing in the spring?
Good question, thanks. So we will do, most likely this is how it will look. We will do the same pre-arrival testing that we did in the fall. It will probably be the exact same thing you did. So spitting into a vial over a Zoom call, super fun. I did it too. And so most likely we'll do that. That worked pretty well. It was much less intrusive, I think, than the way up your nose testing. We discovered 38 cases that would have been on campus to start the semester. And so we felt good about the fact that we caught those cases, and we were able to start the semester with 0 cases in the classroom. And honestly, that is part of what allowed us to get on the trajectory that we've been on all semester. So I think we'll do the same pre-arrival testing. In the spring, I don't expect that we'll be doing the daily surveillance testing. So right now we're doing a random, more or less random 1% daily surveillance testing of all of our students. I don't think we're going to do that in the spring. Rather, I think we're going to lean more into our wastewater testing because it's gone so well this semester. I think we're going to use our wastewater testing as a way to kind of replace the daily surveillance testing that we're doing. So it'll be the same. If we notice an uptick in a particular residential zone, then we'll test everyone living there. But I expect we can move away from the 1% daily surveillance testing that we're doing now.
Thank you. Can you also speak to what we're seeing in athletics as far as plans to bring organized sports returning to Hope?
Yeah, so this kind of speaks again to the question about the student experience. Our athletic teams have been practicing and training this fall. We've been testing 25% of our athletes every week, and honestly, it's worked pretty well. There are a few schools, including a couple in our conference in the MIAA, who are playing and competing this fall. And so we've been watching them and learning from them. And we feel pretty optimistic that we'll be able to play and compete in the spring. And so the current plan is that winter sports would start a conference competition in mid-January. There's a date, I think it's January 23rd or something like that. Don't quote me on that, because that's off the top of my head. But there's winter sports will start mid-January. That's conference competition, and then fall sports will start early March and go through the end of April. So for football, soccer, volleyball, fall sports, we're looking at playing in the second half of the spring semester, and then spring sports will hopefully more or less be able to stick to the original schedule. So yeah, we're trying to be adaptive. We're trying to be creative. It's going to be an interesting and somewhat fun spring because we'll have all our sports playing at the same time in the spring semester. Winter, spring, and fall sports all playing in one semester. So that will be obviously different. We've never had a football game in March or April, but I think it'll be kind of fun.
Thanks. I'm going to shift to more forward, future-focused questions here in the pre-arrival and one coming up from our live Q&A. But first, if you could both speak to what made you decide to return to Hope to serve in this capacity.
You want to go first, or do you want me to?
You go first.
Okay. Yeah, there's a short story and a long story. The headline is we felt God called us to be here. And I've told the long story a couple of times publicly. I told it last fall in Getty Church. If you really care to hear the 35-ish minute version of the story, it's that it started as a whisper, and it became a shout that we couldn't ignore, that was insurmountable. And this job for me moved from something that I could never imagine myself doing to something that I couldn't imagine myself not doing. And I just feel now, and honestly, this sense of calling is even more palpable, I think, for us now than it was when we first got here a little more than a year ago. I feel like this is what God was preparing me for, and that in a remarkable way, because I didn't predict it, every place God put me in terms of my career and what we were doing was actually God preparing us for this. There's a great verse, it's Proverbs 16:9, and it says, "In his heart a man plans his course, but the Lord determines his steps." And so that says two things: man plans, but God determines. And I had a plan, we had a plan for what we thought we were going to do and where we thought we were going to live. And it turns out God was just determining our steps, and God was actually putting us in places, I think, so that we would be prepared for this. And when I think about the places God put me in the Treasury Department during the financial crisis. God put me at the New York Stock Exchange when they were being totally disrupted by technology. And so I've just been through places that and crazy, extraordinary circumstances that, in a remarkable way, I think actually, as much as anyone can be prepared for it, I think God was preparing me for this job during this season. What would you say?
Oh, I don't know that I have that much to add to it. I felt it as strongly as Matt. Otherwise, it wasn't something I naturally wanted to do. I liked where we were living. I did have a career there for a while that I quit a couple of years before we moved. And looking back, I think this was the reason that I quit. It would have been very hard for me to leave if I still had my really great job in New York City. I would have been like, wait, what about me? But I didn't have anything that I was tied to there. And the things that Matt experienced, I mean, we both experienced together. And so it was pretty clear. And it's clear now too. I mean, looking back, when we think about those signs, you know, that brought us here, it helps during the difficult times. Like, oh, now we've got COVID, but we know we're supposed to be here.
Yeah.
So.
Right.
And thank you. And since you've been here, you've been talking about a vision for Hope College. I'm going to take a live question and combine it with a pre-submitted, which is about a 5-year vision for Hope. But the live question I'm just going to read, and then feel free to kind of take that into the vision question. The live question goes like this. Student loans have been the fastest growing asset on the federal government's balance sheet in the last decade. What might the future hold on that score, either in terms of the availability of loans or the possibility of loan forgiveness?
Okay, great. Thanks. Good question. Let me start with sort of the I'll call it the intermediate to long-term vision for Hope. And I have been talking about 3 big pillars or areas of focus that I want Hope to be focused on for that time horizon. And I think it's 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And the good news is that we're young enough to be here for a long time if the institution will have us, if they'll allow us to be here. So the 3 things I've been talking about, and I started talking about this in the summer of 2019, and it turns out now they're more relevant than ever. The 3 pillars are the future of learning, the future of work, and the future business model of higher education. So with the future of learning, what we're talking about there is the future of the classroom, the future of curriculum, the future of teaching modalities. It turns out we've learned a lot about all of those things over the last 6 months. And as we've talked about earlier in this call, part of what we're trying to do now is to make sure that we institutionalize and crystallize some of the good things we've learned that actually we would want to endure in a more normal time. One thing we just announced internally that we haven't announced publicly yet is that we're working to organize sort of an internal think tank or an R&D office, if you will, that will actually, we'll staff it with 2 or 3 professors, and we'll use that as our sort of place to collect, source, and analyze ideas. And one thing that we've seen over the course of the semester is that a lot of people say, I've got an idea, what if we try this? Or I really like how this is going during COVID, what if we tried to keep it in place or let it endure? But so there's a lot of great ideas, but then it turns out, then you have to grade papers and you have to prepare your lecture and you have to do your day job. And so in the business world, it's pretty common to have an R&D office. We don't have anything like that. And so one thing we're in the process of setting up is we're calling it Office of Possibilities and Innovation. And so that I think will really help crystallize the future of learning. Future of work, we talked about that already, but we're paying a lot of attention to how the workplace is evolving and trying to be deliberate about connecting the classroom experience to what our students will do for most of their lives, which is work. And then on the future business model, really what we're talking about here is the tuition model. And the questions about the rise of student loans. I mean, the reason student loans have been rising is because tuition has been rising. Tuition at Hope and most other places has risen at 2.5 times faster than inflation over the last 20 years. So Sarah and I were here as students 20 years ago, and tuition has risen 2.5 times faster since then than inflation. That's a crazy trajectory. It's a trajectory that doesn't make any sense. And it's also something that very few institutions are doing anything creative to try to solve. And we're a place that's starting to think about how we can go after that in a creative way. We're working on a brand new tuition model that honestly I think is probably 10 to 15 years to pull off. We're calling it Pay It Forward. And the way it would work is that students would come to Hope and they'd get a full scholarship to be at Hope, still pay room and board, but would get a full scholarship for tuition. And then that would come with a commitment to be philanthropically generous to Hope after you graduate. And what you would be doing then is not paying for your own education because yours was paid for, rather you'd be paying it forward to future students. So that's that's what we're thinking about with regard to the business model. We think the trajectory of tuition increases is crazy. It doesn't make any sense. And we're trying to be a place that's creatively trying to solve it. There's two big trends that we're watching in higher education right now, which we think are really interesting, and we think give hope a chance to do something countercultural and distinct. The first big trend that we're watching, and this is pretty obvious, but the implications of it will be significant. The increase in online learning is going to accelerate. And what that will mean is that curriculum across the country will become more uniform. The big online players, so think Arizona State University, their freshman class is 50% larger this year than last year. Western Governors University is one of the biggest online schools. They're growing at 20% plus every single year, and they're aspiring to have 1 million online students. So the big online schools are getting bigger. What that means is that more people will be learning the same thing from the same people in the same places. And we think that gives us an opportunity to take the opposite direction. And while curriculum across the country is going to get more uniform, we're starting to think about how can we actually make our curriculum more customized, more individualized, so that at some point it might actually be the case, instead of offering a menu of 91 majors, which is what we offer today, we could have curricular building blocks that students could use as they come into Hope, and then build their own customized curricular path. So in other words, we essentially have 3,000 different majors. Each student would have their own curricular path that we could help design with them. So that's a big trend that we're watching. And again, as I said, we think it gives us an opportunity to do something distinct. And then the other thing that's happening is that expenses are going up across the board at colleges and universities. At the same time, revenue is declining. And what that means is that scholarships will be less and less available this year, next year, and in the distant future, because colleges and universities are going to go through a near-term period of sustained financial challenges. And that means that especially the in-person college experience will get more expensive and fewer scholarships will be available. Again, going to our pay it forward idea, we think that gives us an opportunity to do something different, to do something countercultural, and we're excited about it.
Well, thank you very much. We've made it through all but one of our pre-submitted questions, and we're all caught up on the live Q&A. So thank you to all of our guests, the participants on the call today.
Great timing.
Great questions, and we are right on time. I will end with our last, some thank yous starting to come in on the chat. And I'll end with our last question. This one's a fun one. It came from a family member who went to Sacred Heart Grade School. The arch rival across town was Faith, Hope, and Charity. If you had to pick faith, hope, or charity as the number one of those three, which would you pick and why?
So great question. Do you know the answer?
Oh, I have a guess, but
yeah, this might surprise you, but I would pick hope. I've been on a fun intellectual adventure over the last few months of trying to prove that hope is the paramount virtue. And I think it is. There's a famous verse in 1 Corinthians 13 that says, of faith, hope, and love, the greatest of these is love. But there's another verse in Colossians 1:5 that says, faith and love spring from hope. So love may be the greatest, but love springs from hope. So hope is foundational. And we've been talking a lot on our campus this semester and through the COVID season about what is hope? What does that word mean? What is the sentiment behind it? And the problem is the word gets used in our culture in ways where it either gets lost in platitudes or just diluted by the way a lot of people use it, because a lot of people use the word hope as basically a weak wish. Like, I hope the Astros don't win the World Series. Well, that's a sentiment based on you just want somebody else to win the World Series. And it's actually based on uncertainty. You don't know who's going to win the World Series. You just have a preference. And true hope, biblical hope, is not based on uncertainty at all. Rather, it's based on certainty. It's based on the promise of God, that God is going to, in the end, turn all of this out, make all of this out for good, that he's going to turn everything into a good thing. And that's the promise we have for those of us who are in Christ. And that hope, that trustworthy hope, actually allows us to endure the present, even when the present is arduous and challenging, the president can be arduous and challenging too. That trustworthy hope allows us to endure the present in a way that can give us joy, because we know it's going somewhere. We know it's going somewhere really good, and that allows us to journey through the present, even when it's challenging, even when it's really painful, with joy, because we have this hope, this confident expectation. Anyone who comes to meet me in my office gets one of these stickers that the public affairs team helped me make. And the way we define hope is a confident and joyful expectation that something good is going to happen. And that's what we embody at Hope College. And we love this place. I hope that's obvious. Sarah and I love this place. We cry together when a donor meeting doesn't go well. It's probably somewhat unhealthy. We talk about hope. It's often the last thing we talk about before we go to bed and the first thing we talk about when we wake up, but we just are all in. We love this place. And so we're so grateful to be here. And as I said at the open, we've just been really inspired by your students and our colleagues here, and how this institution has navigated the last 6 months.
Thank you very much. And one of our guests thinks that you should start selling those stickers in the bookstore as well. So it's a good tip to end on. But as always, thank you for your time. Thank you for your leadership and your sense of humor and joy that you bring to the work, and to all of the families that joined us today. And thanks to all of our participants for participating in One Big Virtual Weekend and the Family Open House. We encourage you to check out other ways that you can get involved with the college as families at Hope. Check out hope.edu/families. Or if you have another question or follow-up from today's call, email us families@hope.edu. So thank you everybody for participating today, and we hope that you have a great rest of your weekend. See ya.
Thanks everybody.